Good morning. Today we'll have a revision class for your upcoming test on Sunday. The chapters are Basic Concepts of OOPS, Classes and Objects and Function, Overloading. Since we have only 1 hour to cover all the 3 chapters, wherever it is theory, I will be going little faster, and then wherever they've asked you any concept to explain the syntax with an example, I will be writing it and showing it to you, wherein it will take more time. And then you need to study the entire chapters from your textbook. Don't take the topics which I discuss as the only things you're going to study. You need to study the entire chapter, and for 1 marker, some part of it I have covered, but for 1 markers, please do contact your campus teachers. They will be able to help you out. Since we have limited time, I have taken few topics which has been asked in the previous year's board papers. I have referred around 8 papers which has been asked in those questions. I would be discussing it today, but you need to go through the entire chapter. Don't think that these are only the questions from which you will get questions in your test. You need to study everything. Fine. And still, if you have any doubts, please refer to the classes, online classes, which is there in YouTube, wherein I have explained everything in detail. Like for each concept, I have given you 2 to 3 examples and have explained everything in detail. Here is just a revision of those topics, and wherever I need to write, definitely I will write it and show it to you. Wherever the syntax and the declaration or an example is required, yes, I will be writing it for you. But then wherever it is theory, so I'll be little faster. Otherwise, I'll not be able to complete the entire thing in an hour's class. So we'll start with basic concepts of OOPS chapter. This is a complete theoretical chapter wherein you have theory or concepts, explanation of concepts, and introduction. First, you will have the introduction of concepts. What are different programming techniques or paradigms? What are the different programming techniques? How are they different from one another? And what is object-oriented programming concepts, and which languages support object-oriented programming? And then 1 markers would be each concept. They can ask you what is polymorphism, or what is a class, what is an object, and what is abstraction. Like all this would be 1 markers. And then they can ask you two or three concepts for a 2 marker question: advantages, disadvantages, applications, and differences. These are the questions which are asked from this chapter. So we'll start with basic concepts of OOPS. OOP is nothing but object oriented programming. It's a technique. The concepts are basic concepts of object oriented programming are objects, classes, encapsulation, abstraction, polymorphism, inheritance, and dynamic binding. So what is an object? An object, in a shortest way I can say, is an instance of a class. So an object is nothing but a real world element which has some characteristics and behavior. So an object, actually a class is a blueprint from which objects are created. It's an instance of a class. Only when objects are created to a class, the memories are located to a class. And an object will have a copy of its own data members and member functions. Correct? What is a class then? We have written so many class programs, so you will know class, and also a class is a data type, okay, which will have both data members as well as member functions. So class, and to allocate memory to a class or to access the members of a class, we need to create an object. So it's a blueprint from which objects are created. Without creating an object, you cannot access the data which is present in the class, and each class can have more than one object also. So each object will have its own copy of the class data. Getting it? Encapsulation, that is storing the data, that is variables as well as functions under one name. It is encapsulating or storing it, or data, that is data members and member functions in one unit is called encapsulation. It's a property. The example is a class, because a class can have both data members and member functions under one name, right? And abstraction is a process of representing essential features without including background details. Think example. So for example, I need to print a document, and I have one printer in my floor wherein many systems are connected to it. So if I want to print a document, I will just select the file and how many copies, what mode, back to back or new in a page, all that I will select. I give the print command and I continue with my work. After some time, I'll go and collect my printout from the printer. I'm not worried how the data, that file, gets transferred in a network, and at the same time there are many other people also using the same printer. So how your job is queued, because it must be in a queue, right? If more than one person is printing at the same time, then it has to be in a queue wherein the documents gets printed one after the another. All this I will not be worried. My job is to just give the command, go there and collect the printout after some time. That is the process of representing essential features. That is, it will allow you to check, select what kind of printout, how many copies, back to back, color, black and white, all these you can select, but you need not worry actually how the job is done. That is abstraction. Polymorphism or overloading. When we do function overloading, we'll do this in detail. Is nothing but the ability of a message that can be processed in more than one form. Poly is nothing but many. More than one form or having many forms is called polymorphism. And C++ supports two kinds. One is operator overloading and the other one is function overloading. But then for your syllabus you have only function overloading. You don't have operator overloading, but then operators can also be overloaded. That is, the same operator can be used to perform different kinds of functions. Next is inheritance. Inheritance, yeah, we have done one chapter on that. Inheritance is the ability to create a class from an existing class is nothing but inheritance, wherein the child class or the derived class acquires or inherits the properties of base class. The example, real world example I can give you is your phone. So mobile phones, every 6 months or a year you get a new version of your phone, right? So they won't be starting that, creating the phone from scratch. The previous versions, they would have taken all the basic ones and they would have rectified something which was a bug in the previous version, and they would have added new features to it. Same way, you will inherit the properties of an existing class, like you will have that, and then along with that the child class or the derived class can have its own properties. We have done an entire chapter on that. There are different kinds of inheritance also: single inheritance, multiple inheritance, multi-level inheritance, hierarchical inheritance, and hybrid inheritance. These are the different types of inheritance. Inheritance is nothing but creating a new class from a existing class, or one class acquires the properties or inherits the properties and operations of another class. Fine. We have already completed this chapter, that is what kind of inheritance, whether it's public, private, protected, all that we have done in detail in inheritance chapter, wherein for each of that I have written one or two programs. If you have not gone through that, please go back to the video lecture and go through that, which will help you. But for your test, they will ask you only the definition, because in basic concepts they will ask you the definition, what is inheritance, and they can ask you what are the different types. Mention the different types. You need not explain it. The different types are single inheritance, multiple inheritance, multi-level inheritance, hybrid inheritance, and hierarchical inheritance. The next is dynamic binding, that is binding during runtime. Like suppose what do you mean by polymorphism? Polymorphism is like, for example, in one program only I am having a function called area, that in like around three functions of the same name, wherein I am finding the function area of a square, a rectangle, and a circle. Okay, so the user, depending on how many parameters passed, because for a square I would need one, and then let me keep it as rectangle. Rectangle I would need two, and let me find the area of a triangle here, and for triangle I would need three, given three sides. That formula I will be using. So I will be having side 1, side 2, and side 3. So if I pass 3 arguments, I will call the triangle function. If I pass 2 arguments, then I will call the rectangle function, and if I pass only one argument, I will call the square function. Fine. But the name of the function itself only is area. So depending on how many arguments during execution I enter, that particular function gets executed. That is called dynamic or late binding. The process of linking procedure call. Procedure call is nothing but the function call to a specific sequence of code or function, like which function to execute during runtime or the execution of a program is called dynamic binding. Hopefully you have understood this. Next is, what do you mean by object-oriented programming? You know there are three different kinds of programming. One is procedure-oriented programming, structure-oriented programming or structured programming, and other one is object-oriented programming. So what is object-oriented programming? A programming paradigm that represents concepts as objects and have data fields and procedures known as methods. Yeah, an object is associated with a class, so it will have, what does a class have? Data fields or data members, wherein all the variables or constants declared in the class are called data members, and member functions are the functions declared in the class. So methods and functions, member functions, methods, procedures, subroutines all mean the same. Example, yeah, they can ask you for one marker, name high level languages, examples of high level object oriented programming languages. They are C++, Java, Python are some of the examples of it. Next is characteristics of OOPS. Emphasis on data rather than the procedure. Here you are more worried, or the security of the data, that is the variables or the constants, is important rather than the functions. Programs are divided into objects. Data is hidden. Yeah, it's hidden inside a class, and depending on the access specifier, whether it is private, public or protected, depending on that the accessibility depends. Like this also, access specifiers, the next chapter I'll tell you exactly what it means. It has already been done, like you would have been familiar with private, public and protected. These are the three access specifiers available. So what do you mean by access specifiers? Which will say where it can be accessed and what are the from where it can be accessed and which functions can access it. Whether the class functions or the functions which is declared in the class can only access it, or the functions from outside also can access it. And then objects communicate with one another through functions, and new data and functions. Yeah, you know, inheritance can be added easily to an existing one because you already have a class. You can create something from the existing one, so it is adding new data and functions to the existing one. And it follows bottom up approach, means the main function is below everything. Anything you want, the declaration of that should be before main. Like anything you declare define after main, it will not recognize. Main should be the last function in your program code. So whenever I write a program, you see that I write main in the end because it follows the bottom up approach. Anything you call in main, it will go up and see whether it has that or not. So I'm telling you the declaration of it should be above main. I can define it below main, that's okay, but the declaration should be above main. So it follows bottom up approach, whereas structured programming follows top down approach. Example, you see from top, like main should be the first and remaining you have all the other down. The next is procedure oriented programming, object oriented programming. Difference here: in procedure oriented programming, the large programs are divided into number of functions, whereas in object oriented programming, the programs are divided into objects. Here in procedure oriented, the data is not hidden because you cannot specify there, that restrictions cannot be put where it can be accessed, which can access, which cannot, since there is no concept of class here. So it is available to all the functions can access all the other functions, whereas here the data is hidden inside a class, and with the help of access specifiers you can specify where it can be used. So data is hidden and cannot be accessed. Follows top down, this follows the bottom up approach. Data communicate with one another through functions in procedure oriented programming, whereas objects communicate here the data communicates, there the objects communicate between one another through functions. Here the emphasis is on the procedure or the function, the emphasis is on the data rather than the function. Please have a look and go through this. Yeah, this is a commonly asked board exam question actually. Next is the advantages. Yes, what are the different advantages of object-oriented programming? Simplicity, modularity, extensibility, flexibility, maintainability and reusability. These are the advantages of object-oriented programming. Whenever you're writing this, you can write one line for each, but whatever are the keywords mentioned, please make sure you underline it. When you're underlining and highlighting it, definitely you will get marks. So these are the advantages of object oriented programming. Then there are disadvantages also. So it's a 5-marker question. Advantages and disadvantages. The programs are larger in size because you're writing the program using object oriented concepts. Whereas only functions, then it is not that big. But then declaring a class, declaring access specifiers, then creating objects, with the help of that accessing it, it makes a program bigger. Because of that, the smaller programs, and it is like if it's a very simple one, it's not suitable for all types of programs. And then polymorphism and dynamic binding. That is, if you have same function or name with different function signature, then during runtime, binding the function call to the function and executing takes more time, and that is processing time required is more, is one of the disadvantage of object oriented programming. Please have a look. Next is applications of object oriented programming. Where is it used? Nobody will ask you how is it used. They are asking you where is it used. It is used as real-time system design, simulation and modeling, object oriented database, distributed database, client server systems, real-time systems, and then modeling, simulation and modeling systems. All these are different. I think some are repeated again. Please don't write it repeatedly. Make sure you write only once each of these. Fine, they won't ask you how exactly is that, they'll ask you where it is used, where is it applicable. So hopefully you have understood this. This completes the basic concepts of C++ chapters revision. Now we'll start with the classes and object chapter revision. So I will write one program. While writing those examples only, I'll explain you what each one of it means, like what is a class definition, how do you write it, what are access specifiers, and then what is the significance of scope resolution operator, defining a class with syntax and objects of a class, how do I create the objects, and how to access the elements of the class using those objects and member function inside and outside. And I will be writing all that, but it won't be entire program, only the code modules wherein I will be writing that particular part. Fine. We'll start with class definition. How do I do that? Class is a keyword. Class name. Okay. Class name. I will open it. Then private. So data members and member functions. Then you have, for that also you write the same thing, data members and member functions. Then protected data members and member functions. So you need to write private data members and member functions, public and protected. After that, close the class with a semicolon. Here also you have to write the same thing, data members and member functions, and then for protected also you have to write data members and member functions. This is a general syntax of a class, that is class name, open the bracket, close the bracket, terminate it with a semicolon. In that you have private, public and protected. For that each one can have, may not have, can have data members and member functions. Getting it? Okay. Now let me write one example. Like how will I write my example of a class? So I can say class greeting. Okay. Private char name of 30. Public void hello. Cout enter your name. In name. Cout hello name. Close your class here and close your function also. So you can say that in private I have name, in public void hello is the name of my function. Okay, I open my function here, enter your name, in name, and after that cout hello, and close. There are two brackets here, close the function and close the this thing. This is a example of a class. Now what are access specifiers? See here, access specifiers are those which tell where you can access those members. There are three kinds. They are private, public, protected. There are three types: private, public and protected. So how do I do that? Private, public and protected access specifier. See, anything in private can be accessed only by the member functions of the class. For example, I have class XYZ. Private int x, then public void print x. So I have declared x in private, correct? Only this function can access it. Suppose I have void main here. From main I cannot access this x. This x cannot be accessed, like x, y, z, x, so y dot x. I cannot do it here. Getting it? Only the functions declared inside the class can access the private data of the excuse me. Only the functions declared inside the class can access the private data of the class. So anything outside, because main is not a part of the class, correct? So main cannot access the private data. That is, in main you cannot print the value of x. X can be accessed only in the functions that is declared inside a class. So private is something which can be accessed only within the class, not outside the class. Public can be accessed anywhere in the program. Protected can be accessed by the members of the class as well as the derived classes. For your exam, if they ask you explain any two, you explain private and public. Private can be accessed only by the members or within the class by the member functions declared inside the class. It cannot be accessed outside, whereas public can be accessed outside the class. Hopefully you have understood this. Now we'll say how do you declare the object of a class. For example, I have class hello. Okay. Public, I have void greeting is a function. I will say see out hello welcome. This is the end of my function. This is the end of my class. Okay. Class hello public void greeting cout hello welcome. Then I have void main. How do I access the data? By creating an object. How do I create an object? Class name space the object name. This is the defining object. Yes, class name space the object name. So what is the class name here? Hello. So I will say HOBJ. That is my name of the object. You can give any name of the for the object. So hello is the class name. I am creating the object for this class. So class name space the object name. This is how you declare a object. And then I will say HOBJ, that is object dot the function of the class, that is getting it. Hopefully you have got it. I have this class. I have one function called void greeting. What is it doing? It is telling me hello, welcome. That's all. I have put it in double quotes. After that, in main, first I have to create an object. When I create an object with the help of the object, how do I create? You have to say class name space the object name is the general syntax for creating an object. Object dot greeting would print you the it will execute this function greeting and it will print you the output as hello welcome. This is how you define objects of a class and create it. Syntax also you should be knowing. Hopefully you have understood this. The next is declaring member function inside and outside the class. So let me say I have one class example. Okay. Public. I'll say what is this? A constructor. Here I will write int x. X is equal to 10. Okay. Next, void add is another function. X is equal to x plus 10. Next, what I will do? Void display. This I will declare here, but I will not write it here. Okay, this is the end of my class. What is the name of the class? Class example. In public, don't have private here. Everything is in public. In text is a variable. After that, example is a function which is nothing but the constructor, because same name as the class name. And what am I doing here? Giving x is equal to 10. Okay, then void had, so declaring a member function inside the class. That is, I have declared, this is called a declaration, void add, and I am writing the body of it also inside the class only. This is called defining the member functions. Declaration is nothing but return type of the function, name of the function, open and close brackets, and the argument list with semicolon is declaration. Definition is writing the body of the class. Okay, defining means you are writing the code for it, body of it. Here what I am doing is void add. It's the function which does not return any value, no arguments, because it is blank. And what I'm in the body of the function also is return inside the class only. So x is equal to x plus 10. Okay, after that void display, I am not writing the body here, I am only declaring it here. I will define it outside the class. This is inside the class and I will write it outside the class. You need to see how I will write it outside. Hopefully you have understood what is inside. Inside means writing the function and the body of the function inside the class only. But outside means this is the declaration, that is void displays the declaration. Now the body of this or definition of this I will write it outside, because my class got over here only. I have terminated it with a semicolon, right? So now I will be writing it outside. How will I do? General syntax of writing is return type of the function. What was the return type of the display function? Void, right? Void. Name of the class to which it belongs to. What was the name of the class? Which was the class name was example. And then scope resolution operator. This is the scope resolution operator symbol. Please make a note. Scope resolution operator. It will specify the scope of the function. That is, the function belongs to which class. So it belongs to example. What was the name of the function? Display, right? And then I will write the body here. Inside I had just said void display and then I have terminated with a semicolon. I have ended my class. But now I am writing void display, return type of the function, name of the class to which it belongs to, scope resolution operator, and name of the function. So I will say cout x. It will, what will it print me? It should print me 20, because x 10 I had given and then the other 10 was plus 10, right? It is 20. So scope resolution operator will tell which class, what is the scope of the function, to which class it belongs to, and the symbol is this. Please make a note. Okay. This hopefully you have understood. This completes the classes and objects revision. We'll start with function overloading chapter revision. So, what do you mean by overloading? It is nothing but polymorphism, that is, the ability of an operator and a function to take multiple forms is known as overloading. So there are two types, operator as well as function. So now you have for your syllabus only function overloading. In the example you can see int sum, int a and int b. So that is the function declaration, because I have terminated it there only. I am not writing the body of it there. Or I can say int sum, int comma int also. So what does it mean? Sum is the name of the function which is going to return an integer value, and I am going to pass two integer arguments to it. That is a and b are two integer arguments which I am going to pass from the calling function to sum, right? The same way down also the name of the function is sum only, but the difference is I am going to pass two float variables to it. See here, overloading is only based on function signature. What do you mean by signature? Don't take the return type into account. That is excluding the return type. Remaining things comes under function signature, like sum int a comma int b and sum float p comma float q. These two are different, right? The name is same. When I say name is same, the spelling, the case, because it differentiates between upper and lower case. So if I have uppercase sum and lowercase sum, it does not mean it is overloading. The spelling should be same. The case, that is the uppercase or the lowercase or combination case, whatever cases you are using should be same in the same scope. That is in the same in the same scope it should be same, like in the same class you are using it, or both are standalone functions, because the same function in two different classes it won't clash. But in the same class, if you have the same name, function name, with two different function signatures, that is called overloading. Or two or three standalone functions having the same signature, different signature but same name, is called overloading. Signature is don't take the return type into account. The name of the function and the argument list is nothing but the function signature. So the top sum you are passing to integers, to the bottom one you are passing to float variables. So that is different. That is called overloading. Same name with different argument list, or I can say int a, sum int a, and another one is int sum int a int b. So the number of parameters passed is different, or the data type of the parameters is passed different, or the order in which it is passed are also different. That is, the function signature is different. It is called overloading. Function overloading. You can see the difference here. Getting it? The next is advantage to overload a function. What are the things? All the functions should have the same name. That is what I said. All the functions in the set have different signatures. What is signature? The name of the function and the argument list is the function signature. Yes, both had different signatures. One has two integer variables passed to it, the other had two float variables passed to it. Yes, they have the same name but different signatures. And the signature of a function does not include the return type. That is what I told you. Function name and argument list is the function signature. Getting it? Advantages. What are advantages? It is executed faster, easy, because you are finding area. Like area can be for anything, like area of a circle, triangle, square, parallelogram. It can be anything, but when you are finding area, why to give different names? You can have the same function with different signatures, so that it is easy for you to remember also, and you will understand what it is doing. So maintenance is easy, and easy information flow, and debugging is also easy. So let me write one small example for anyway, this example only you can write int a comma int b. That is an example you can write p and q. Next is inline functions. What do you mean by inline functions? See, when you execute a program, your program, what you write in C++, for that to be executed, first it has to be, the compiler will convert it into a machine understandable form, right? It has to be converted into a machine understandable form, or an executable file has to be generated. It will be generated only when there are no errors. Syntax errors, yes, if there are any, you need to debug. Once it is done, before execution, a .exe file would be there. In inline functions, only when you execute, the main function gets loaded into main memory. Only the function calls will be there. Okay, but the entire body of the function will not be there. So whenever there is a function call, what happens is it is taken down from the secondary to the primary, executed and put back. But inline function, in the place of the function call, the function body itself is placed. That is an inline function. Getting it? So whenever in the place of the function call, the entire function, that is the body of the function itself is there, so there is no linking and loading here. General syntax, and then it is a hint to the compiler. And whenever you are having small functions, that is a function one-liners or two-liners which you are repeatedly executing, instead of linking and loading, which is a overhead on the processor time, you can give a hint to the processor that this is a inline function. So instead of the function call, the body can be substituted, provided it's a very small one. It cannot have iterative statements. Okay, and then the thing is, if there is no memory available, it will be treated as a normal function only. The general syntax is you have to use the keyword inline. Inline is the keyword which states that it is an inline function, return type, function name, argument, list. So I will write one program to show how a inline function works. That is, in programming example, normally they will ask you the general syntax. The programming example, inline functions are very, very, very important, and you also, it's important for your lab. Like an inline function, what is the definition of it, general syntax, advantages, disadvantages, and a example. They'll ask you to write a programming example, so please make a note of it. Hash include iostream.h okay. Then see, inline, everything is in lowercase. Inline int, this is the return type. Cube is the name of the function. Int a is the argument. I am going to pass an integer argument. Inline int return type, yes, inline is a keyword I have written. You can see the general syntax there. Inline is a keyword and it has to be in lowercase. Don't write it in uppercase, nothing. All the keywords are in lowercase only. So inline I have written. Return type is the function is going to return an integer value. Name of the function is cube. This is also a practical program. And int a, I am going to pass an integer variable to it. Return a star a. End of my function. So I'm going to return, what is that? A into A into A is nothing but A cube, right? So this is inline. I have to write the main. The program is not yet over. So this is an inline function. Inline int. See, it's a one-liner. So I can definitely make it as an inline. And by default, all the functions declared and defined inside a class becomes inline. So that is why I would insist you people to declare a function inside and write it outside. Otherwise you would be getting warnings, and if you get warnings you may lose marks in your practical exams. Now we'll continue with that. Void main. So CLR, SCR, clear screen. Okay. Int A is equal to 10. C out. Cube of 10. So what is it? Void main int A is equal to 10. I'm saying A is equal to 10. Fine. Cube of 10. Because I already know A is equal to 10. This is the function call. Correct. When I call this, it will go to the inline function. A is what? 10. So what will it return me? It will return me A into A into A. So what is A into A into A? That is A cube. 10 into 10 into 10. That is 1000. That gets printed at the place of the function call. Whatever it returns, that number gets printed here because I am returning it. And then get CH. Hopefully you have understood this. This example only you can write for your exam. Next is advantages and disadvantages of inline function. Advantages is the code of the object is reduced because it's small, right? And it increases the execution and the efficiency in terms of speed, because in the place of the function call I have the function body, so you need not link and load. There is no burden on the system for function calling, because when it calls you have to link it to the body, upload it, run and put it back. So it saves the overhead, but it will increase the size in the main memory, because imagine in the place of one line you are having 3 lines. Like I am calling it 10 times, in all the 10 places you will be in the place of the function call you are putting the function itself, so it would increase the size of it. That's a drawback. And if you are having it in a header file, it will make the size of the header file very large. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of inline functions. They will not ask you how it makes large, but then it makes sense. In the place of the function call, if I'm substituting the body, so every time I'm calling it hundreds of times, I would be putting the body hundreds of times. Definitely the size would increase. So these are advantages and disadvantages of inline functions. The next is a friend function. So when we did class, I told you that I cannot access, only the private data can be accessed by the member functions of a class. But Suppose I want a function, but I don't want to make it as a member function of the class. I want a standalone function, that is a function which is not a part of the class, to access the private data of the class, that is to private and protected, because protected also cannot be accessed outside, it has to be accessed inside, but only difference is it can be accessed by the derived class members also, whereas private cannot be accessed outside. Only the functions declared in the class can access the private data of the class. So if I want to make a standalone function or a function which is not a part of the class to access the private data of the class, I can make it as a friend. A friend function is a function which can access the private data and protected data of the class without being member of the class. That is, it is not a member of the class but has the privileges of the member of the class. This is called friend functions, and it should be declared inside the class by using the keyword friend. Friend, return type, function name, and you have to pass the object of that class to which it is friend to. That is a friend function. For example, I want you to go through the lecture wherein in detail I have explained what is a friend function. This is the general syntax. Like for example, friend is a function of hello class. Then you have to pass the object of hello to the friend function as an argument. So then with the help of the object, it will access the data of the class. Getting it? Hopefully you're getting it. All the best for your exams. Do well. Okay. Before that, let me do one more thing. The characteristics of friend functions. A friend function is not a member function of the class but still has full access rights. That is, it can access the private and the protected members of the class. Otherwise, it is not possible for a non-member. That is, a function which is not member of a class cannot access the private data. But then a friend function, even though it is not a non-member, it will have the access rights. And a friend function cannot be called using an object of the class, right? Because with the object, why do I need an object? Suppose if I want to call a function of a class, I need to first create an object for that class and then object dot the function. We have done it till now. Object dot the function will allow me. But since the friend function is not a part of the class, so you cannot call it using the object because it is not a part. How can you call it, right? It makes sense that way. And then it has to be called like a normal function. How do you call a normal function? By the function name, open bracket. If there are any arguments, you pass that, close it, and semicolon. That's it. You don't need a object there for a standalone function. Friend function is declared by the classes that is granting the access. That is, suppose a class hello wants to have a friend, that inside hello only you have to say friend of that class. That is, the friend function it is to be made friend inside the class only, not outside. And how do you do that? By using the keyword friend. But for outside the function, it is a normal function. It is not friend to everyone. Like you can call it, because if it's a standalone function, you can call it as it is, because standalone functions you cannot specify the private, public and protected. It is only for the class functions. And a function is declared with the keyword friend. While defining friend function, it does not use keyword friend or scope resolution operator. That is, when you're writing the body of the function, you don't use friend. Only inside the class you will use the keyword friend. That is what it means. Please go through this. Hopefully you have understood one markers. Please go through the textbook, and this is just few important topics I have covered, but for your test make it a point to read, like let it be a practice to go through your textbooks instead of only referring to important questions, because important questions are only for your final exam preparations after studying the entire book. Hope do well. Take care. All the best for your exams. Bye bye.